Merry Christmas to me. Deal with multiple injuries in the NFL slate. How about an ejection for NBA? Sure. Why not? Wow. Uh what a way to end Christmas night with a nice pool ejection. So on Patreon, my flag plant was Jordan Poole and Draymond Green. I thought that those two guys were going to be under-owned because Golden State had gotten blown out back-to-back games, and I thought the field was just assuming they were going to get blown out again, and you saw pretty low ownership on Poole. You saw low ownership on Draymond. Draymond absolutely smashed. Jordan Poole had 32 real-life points through three quarters, and he gets ejected. And that is going to keep me out of the cash. So, yeah, it is pretty painful. Pretty painful, but a lot of busts. I mean, there was just not much value in the slate. So what I talked about in the stream was I wanted to go with a bit more of the balance build because there was guys like Hartenstein picking up 30% ownership. And I was like, I mentioned in my YouTube video, I was like, if he was low owned, I was intrigued by him. But like I saw coming up to lock, like, he was like 30%. I was like, I don't want any of Hartenstein at 30% ownership. Wiseman was very popular. Like Wiseman, again, a lot of like really questionable value plays were picking up ownership. There's a few more. I mean, a lot of bust all around, right? Like so, like the balance build right now is winning it, and I think it will hold off in the late game too. But yeah, my lineup. So a lot of blowouts too. Marcus Smart lost some minutes there to the blowout. Hardaway smashed. I was also tilted about Luka Doncic playing the entire second half at like 50% ownership. Reeves started really slow, but he salvaged. LeBron was fine. Thomas Bryant never came back in the fourth quarter. That was tilting. Poole was on pace to break the slate, ejected. Draymond smashed, and Robert Williams was a bust. But as were basically all the value plays on this slate. So that's the recap there. Merry Christmas to me with a Jordan Poole ejection. And yeah, let's talk about this 7-gamer. Really quick, though, the sponsor of today's video, guys, is Prize Picks. You can use the code DKDFS for 100% match up to $100. If you're not familiar, it's a player prop site where you build 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 6 player props and 1 to 25 extra money. Currently, right now, 3 for 5, looking to go 4 for 6 if Ayton goes under his PRA. So going to be like an average day for me. But yeah, give it a try. A lot of fun. And if you guys are looking for premium content, you can always check out my Patreon link down below. Any questions, let me know in the comment section, or you can hit me up on Twitter. So Brooklyn and Cleveland is the first game here. On the Brooklyn side, Kevin Durant's 10.5K. I think he's certainly playable, but I think, Kyrie looks like the better point per dollar play of the two if I'm going to prioritize one of these stars. The issue is it's really not a good matchup against Cleveland. Cleveland plays slow. Cleveland's been solid defensively, so that's the downside there. I do have a little bit of interest in the front court guys and Ben Simmons and Nick Claxton. My issue with Ben Simmons is he's foul prone, but his minutes have ticked up a bit of late. I expect him to play 30-plus minutes if he can stay out of foul trouble. Nick Claxton, I think, will probably play around 30 minutes as well. So I like both front court players here for the Nets. The rest of Brooklyn, Royce O'Neal's 4-5. His minutes have been ticking down a bit of late, but I expect him to play low 30s. He's playable. TJ Warren seeing rotation minutes at 3.8K. I think he's playable. The minutes in Seth Curry have kind of been all over the place. He's been like almost out of the rotation to playing a little bit more of late. Watanabe probably sees a couple of rotation minutes, but it's really hard to trust any of these cheap guys. I mean, outside of Royce, yes, you can play Warren, you can play Curry, but the minutes are not secure at all. Moving on to Cleveland. So Cleveland, better matchup for them. I like the ceiling on Donovan Mitchell at 8.9K. He's also kind of been up and down. He shot 4 of 16 last game, but he's a guy that can consistently go for 50-plus fantasy points. So I do like Donovan Mitchell a good amount. I like his shooting guard eligibility. The rest of Cleveland, I mean, Garland has been disappointing of late. He's still a guy that does have a ceiling as well. I think I would prefer Mitchell to Garland, but Garland is $1,200 cheaper. The front court guys do feel a little bit underpriced with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. I expect in a competitive game, you probably see mid-30s minutes from Allen. I think he makes a pretty good play. And Evan Mobley probably sees mid-30s minutes as well. So if I had to pick between the two, I think I'd slightly prefer Jarrett Allen to Mobley, but both front court players in play. Value-wise, LeVert, I expect to play somewhere in the neighborhood of like 25 minutes off the bench. He's got shooting guard, small forward eligibility, so a fine value play. And Kevin Love, I always like in tournaments. He's a good point per minute guy. His minutes can fluctuate, but when he gets extended, like he can break a slate, and it's not like he's super expensive either. So I do have some interest in him for GPPs. Chetty Osman probably sees rotation minutes. You'll probably see Okoro play a bit. Lamar Stevens play a bit. No, I'm not going to be chasing Isaac Okoro. So let's move on to the Clippers and the Pistons. The Clippers, no Kawhi Leonard. I think Paul George makes for a pretty good spend up in both formats, in my opinion. Good matchup. Should play mid-30s minutes. Is going to be the go-to guy. So I like Paul George here. The rest of the Clippers are just like kind of just like secondary plays. I mean, I like the ceiling on Zubac at 5K. His minutes have been all over the place. He has been dealing with some foul trouble, but if he can stay out of foul trouble against his Pistons front court, I could see him having a pretty big game. So I would say Zubac probably my next favorite play, but Wall and Reggie, they'll split the point guard duties. Morris probably sees around 30 minutes. The minutes have ticked up a bit on Batum, but his price is up. Terrence Mann feels a bit pricey. You have Norman Powell back. It's just one of those teams where, like, outside of George and Zubac, there's not a ton that stands out. On the Pistons side, another team that's kind of frustrating. Now, they have been giving their guards a little bit more run of late, as they should. It's like, why are we playing Corey Joseph minutes? But yeah, Bogdanovich at 6.1K, I think is a fair price point for him. He's relatively scoring dependent, so if he makes his shots, he has a ceiling. If he does not make his shots, he can really hurt you, but reasonable price point for him. I like the price on both guards here for Killian Hayes and Jaden Ivey. Like I said, the minutes have ticked up on them in competitive games, so I think both the Pistons guards are actually pretty good plays here with Ivey and with Killian Hayes. I actually do like Jalen Duren too, so kind of weird for me to say. I do have a good amount of interest in this Pistons team. Duren should play somewhere in the neighborhood of like 25 to 30 minutes, 30, 29, 30, 28, and 28 minutes over the last 5 games. So I like the two guards. I like Jalen Duren. The rest of the Pistons, I think Isaiah Stewart's playable. He should see somewhere in the neighborhood of like mid-20s minutes. Bagley will play the backup 5. I mean, if you think Duren gets in foul trouble, you can play him. He's going to be relatively productive when he's on the court. So fair value play. Burks will see rotation minutes. Sadiq Bey will see rotation minutes. You probably see a little bit around for Kevin Knox. But nothing that really stands out with those bench guys. Minnesota, Miami, so not necessarily the best spot here for Minnesota, but we'll see about the status of Bam. Like, if Bam Adebayo misses and Jimmy Butler miss, then this Miami defense is not the same at all, and I would be totally fine loading up on Minnesota. Minnesota's been running extremely tight rotations of late. We'll keep an eye on the status of Slow-Mo. If he's out, just going to solidify the minutes for like all these guys, all the main guys in the rotation. So Anthony Edwards, D'Angelo Russell, in a competitive game, I expect these guys to play 35-plus minutes. We've seen 38, 38, 38, and 40 minutes for Ant over the last 4 games. D'Angelo Russell played 39 minutes last game. Like, these two guys are playing a ton. So I do like Ant. I do like Russell. Gobert was super frustrating last game. He played 36 minutes, only went for 25 fancy. But I think he's a pretty good play. Even if Bam plays, like, you're going to see a lot of run for Rudy Gobert. And then if there's no slow-mo, McDaniel should play all the minutes he can handle. He played 39 minutes last game. He does have a ceiling if he can stay out of foul trouble. That's the only real issue with him. You also saw Naz Reid play a good amount alongside Gobert. He's a good point per minute guy, so there's no slow-mo. I think he's playable. The only downside is he only has center eligibility, so a little bit tougher to get him in your lineups. I don't mind Jalen Noel. I think he probably plays 25 or so minutes. He's not shot well of late. He seems to, when I play him, he can't hit a shot. When he's awful chalk with the full team healthy, that's when he goes 100% shooting and can't miss and falls into all his rebounds. But if there's no slow-mo, I feel a little bit better about the minutes for Noel. You'll see rotation minutes for Austin Rivers. He won on that stretch where he shot like 100% from the field. But when he doesn't shoot 100% from the field, you can see the floor on Rivers. So yes, he's in play, but that little stretch of games he went on was definitely outlier performance. All right, let's move on to Miami. So this team's so frustrating to talk about because they just list so many guys in the injury report. But Jimmy and Bam Adebayo are both questionable. This is big news, right? Because Miami, we know they run a tight rotation. And if those two guys are out, and you also have Caleb Martin, he's probable, so he should be good to go. And I believe Vincent's questionable. Haslam doesn't matter. Dedmon's out. So if Jimmy and Bam Adebayo are out, well, number one, Hero would be the clear go-to guy. Even at 9.1K, would be in play at the top. I think Kyle Lowry would probably be easier to get to at 6'6". He would look pretty good. And Victor Oladipo's minutes have ticked way up of late. He's been playing around 30 minutes a game. He would look a little bit better. Strus should probably play a good amount, but he's been frustrated. Whenever I roster this guy, he can't hit a shot. As far as who would start at the center position if Bam and Adebayo's out, I'm not sure. They could go a lot of different ways, and they've done a lot like this season when Bam's out and Dedmon's out. Like, they started Jovic a couple games. They could start Orlando Robinson. They could start Small, Haywood, Highsmith. They could technically start Jamal Cain, I guess. So will be interesting to see who they start at the center position if Bam and Adebayo's out, because whoever that is, I'm going to like. But I'm not sure who it would be because they've gone a lot of different ways here. Now, if Jimmy and Bam are both in, there's not a ton that stands out. I mean, I think the main three guys would be playable, but there would be no priorities for me. Houston and Chicago, this game looks pretty appealing. Two bad defenses going up against each other. I like both guards here with Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green. In a competitive game, I expect these guys to play mid-30s minutes. He did have some foul trouble last game for KPJ. Jalen Green played 39 minutes. And then my boy Sengun, minutes have not been amazing on him, but we know he's a good point per minute guy. 35, 37, and 41 fancy points over the last 3 games. So the main 3 guys I think look pretty good. And keep an eye on the status of Eric Gordon. If he's out, KJ Martin should start, and he'd be one of the better values on the board. He played 30 minutes last game. Jabari Smith also been playing pretty well of late. He had a massive game last game. I'd say that was probably a bit of an outlier, but he should see over 30 minutes as well. So I kind of like this whole Houston team in this matchup. The 2 guards, Sengun, Jabari Smith. If there's no Gordon, I like KJ Martin. Eason, it's just like, even if Gordon's out, his minutes just don't tick up. It's really frustrating because I think he should be playing more, but he doesn't. Don't think I can get to anyone else on this team. So let's move on to Chicago. So here's the thing. It's usually the same breakdown for me with DeRozan, LaVine, and Vooch of I have interest in all 3. I really like this matchup. The problem with me for building out one lineup is trying to figure out who I want to go to. Who's going to be the guy that, outperforms the other 2. And this one I think will come down to ownership. If I end up playing one of these Chicago guys. So for example, if everyone plays Zach LaVine because he's got shooting guard, small forward eligibility, and he's only 7'6", I'm going to play DeRozan. Or if everyone's looking to Vooch and DeRozan, I'm going to go LaVine, right? So it's kind of going to come down to, if I play one of these Chicago guys, it's going to come down to ownership. Patrick Williams, 4'6", feels priced about right. His minutes have ticked way up of late, 37 minutes back-to-back games. I think he's a pretty safe value. No Alex Caruso, so I think Ayo Dosunmu will be one of the more popular plays on the board, but I get why. 34, 33 minutes. Not going to be super productive when he's on the court, but at this price point, I think he stands out as a really good value. If you want the pivots in tournaments, it would be Kobe White or Goran Dragic. White struggled last game, but we've seen some big games from Kobe White off the bench, so he would be the pivot off Ayo, or if you wanted to go to Goran Dragic as a pivot, you could look to him as well. And then I kind of like Drummond at 3.3K. He's been getting the backup 5 run in the last couple of games, 15 and 20 minutes. Houston usually does run a backup big with Fernando or Garuba. So 3.3K Drummond on a slate where there's not a ton of value. I kind of like him. We'll see what the ownership comes in on him, though. All right, Indiana and the Pelicans. So Naismith, Jalen Smith, they are both questionable. The Pacers rotation, I hate this Pacers team. The rotation is just so frustrating with Rick Carlisle. One guy we know is going to play a ton is Tyrese Halliburton. 9.5K, I have no issue with that price point. Should play mid-30s minutes. He's the go-to guy. He has a pretty high floor, so I like Halliburton. I think Miles Turner's an interesting buy low candidate here. He's dealt with some foul trouble over the last couple games. In a competitive game, I would think he would play over 30 minutes. So at a 6.4K price point, I do kind of like Miles Turner. Healed should play 30, 35 minutes. I'm kind of indifferent on him. The minutes have been ticking down a bit on Mathurin of late. He's also been struggling with his shot. Nembhard been playing a bit more, 34 minutes in back-to-back games. I think he's a fair value play. Naismith had a couple really big games over the last 2. I would say those 2 are more outlier performances, but if he's available, he's playable. You know what I'm going to say about Jalen Smith. He could literally play 2 minutes. He could play 28 minutes. I wouldn't be surprised about either, so always in play for GPPs. Duarte's back. He's only 3.2. I guess you could do worse. He probably will be in the rotation for 15 to 20 minutes. But let's move on to the Pelicans. So the Pelicans, no Ingram still. Nance is questionable, and we have Zion back. So my issue with this Pelicans team is a lot of these guys are priced up from when Zion missed a couple games. So that's kind of the issue here. But Zion's at 10-3. I mean, I like the spot for him. He should play 35 to 40 minutes in a competitive game. So you want to spend up for Zion, that's fine. I do think CJ's probably a bit overpriced with Zion back. Not that he's out of play, but not a priority for me. JV, the minutes have kind of been disappointing, even with Nance out. I mean, saw the one blow-up game from him. he is usually a pretty good point per minute guy, but at this price point, there's a lot more risk. And if Nance plays, it'll be really, really risky because there's a lot of times where they close with their Larry Nance. And then with the wings, I mean, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, they'll get rotation. They'll start. I think Murphy would be the guy I would take a shot on just because he is, a guy that can get hot behind the 3-point arc. But that's basically the Pelicans. If there's no Nance, Hernan Gomez would play the backup 5. He only played 9 minutes last game. Actually, you did see a little bit of Jackson Hayes too. So that is a little bit concerning as well. So I guess if there's no Nance, they could go Hayes or they could go Hernan Gomez, and I'm not sure which direction they would go to. Hayes did play well last game, so maybe he would get the nod. But all right, let's move on to Utah and San Antonio. Still no Kelly Olynyk for the Jazz, so I think Walker Kessler makes for a pretty good play in the mid-range. I'm expecting 25 to 30 minutes. Decent point per minute guy. Like Walker Kessler as long as he can stay out of foul trouble. Markkanen and Clarkson, these are the two guys with the ceiling. I think both are fully fine options in a decent matchup against the Spurs. Vanderbilt and Beasley, these guys are so up and down, but their ceilings are there. You've seen a couple of big games for Vanderbilt. Malik Beasley's had, he had a decent game last game, 36 fancy points. Mike Conley, you would think this price point is I really want to play 5K Mike Conley, but he's just kind of looking washed up a little bit right now. It's fine. I just he's okay. Sexton was on a limit last game. If he's on a limit again, I can't really do it. Yeah, that's it for Utah on the Spurs side. So here's my issue with the Spurs. Is they just they're running a deep rotation. They're just not giving their main guys a lot of run. At most, you're seeing 30 to 32 minutes from these main guys. So I like the ceiling on Keldon. I like the ceiling on Devin Vassell. I like the ceiling on Trey Jones. But they're just kind of capped minutes wise. So if I had to pick one, I think it would be Keldon Johnson. But yeah, that's the downside right now with the Spurs. The minutes are not great in Pirtle. I know he's dealt with some foul trouble as well. He's kind of splitting time right now with Zach Collins, who also is in foul trouble a lot. Jeremy Sohan has been a couple big games of late. I think he's a fair value play. Probably will be a bit over-owned, but the rookie's been very up and down. And again, over the last couple games, he's played well. Off the bench, Richardson's viable. Probably sees 20 minutes. Bates Diop, McDermott, they should see rotation minutes. I guess he only saw 9 minutes last game for Bates Diop. He still saw 15 to 20 minutes for McDermott. Yeah, that's basically it. Let's finish it up here. This is probably the most appealing game for me. Charlotte and Portland. Two teams that run relatively tight rotations and two teams that don't play much defense. So this is a nice slate night hammer in my opinion. You got Dennis Smith Jr. questionable, and you got Nick Richards doubtful. So don't expect Nick Richards to play. Top end, LaMelo Ball's price is up, but I still like him here because there's not really a lot of standout plays from the first 6 games we talked about. So again, this game I think is the most appealing. I like LaMelo even at the price, even with Rozier back. I think he's still a solid option. I will say Oubre is probably too expensive for me with Rozier back. He will shift to the bench role. His minutes will go down. I like Terry Rozier. Played 38 minutes last game. I think he's a pretty nice play. He's got that shooting guard small forward eligibility, which is nice. Front court, Gordon Hayward kind of just neutral on him. I expect low 30s minutes. I'm fine with Plumlee. I'm fine with PJ Washington. With Nick Richards out, you might see some more run for Plumlee. That could go small, I guess, with PJ Washington as well. Maybe he sees an uptick in minutes. So front court intrigues me because I don't know what they're going to do. Are they just going to give more minutes to Plumlee and Washington and then go a bit more small and just give more minutes to guys like McDaniels and Maladon off the bench? Or do they dust off one of these bigs like Kai Jones and Mark Williams and throw them in that Nick Richards role? So I don't know what they're going to do. They could go a bit small and give more minutes to those wings or dust off one of those bigs at the end of the bench. McDaniels is 4.9. If they go that small ball route, he would see more run. Maladon, his minutes would tick down, and DSJ could be back as well, too. So I think getting that right, guessing correctly on what they're going to do with the backup 5 is pretty important because if they just go with a tight rotation and go small and play PJ Washington as the backup 5, it's going to make the front court guys look pretty good here. And then finally, Portland. So the positive of the Blazers are they run their starters a lot, kind of besides my boy Nurkic. Everyone else sees a ton of run. It's a great matchup. I like Lillard sub 10K. He's a guy that can take over any single game. I've kind of been staying away from Grant, Simons, and Hart, but their price points have come down to a playable point where, if you're going to give these guys mid-30s minutes every single game in this matchup, then, yeah, these guys are playable. Hart, Simons, Grant, they're all in play. I think Hart's probably the easiest to get to because he's got shooting guard, small forward eligibility. My boy Nurkic fouled out in only 21 minutes last game, but he was super productive in those minutes. Bigs have destroyed this front court. I expect probably, high 20s minutes from Nurkic, which still makes him in play. I wish he would play more, but they just really want to play Drew Eubanks for some reason. So Eubanks at 3.6, another playable value. Watford, Sharp, Keon Johnson, those guys will see rotation minutes off the bench, but nothing really stands out there for me. So, yeah, guys, that's going to wrap it up for the video. If you have been enjoying the content, just make sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Hope you guys had a great Christmas, and I will see you all in the next one.